Hello, everybody. How are you?
Hey, happy Sunday.
Happy
Good.
Sunday. How is everybody doing?
Pretty good. No
We're doing
complaints at
great.
all.
It's Sunday. Seems like everybody started a dinner. Tanya was talking about greens. Well, I
It's
did
smoked turkey.
make some Brussels sprouts, and
I love Brussels sprouts. How did you make them?
so I stole the recipe from
Stole.
stole because I copied. Now let's use that word. I copied the recipe from the Red Lobster Brussels sprouts because they saute them with a little maple syrup.
Oh, okay.
And I added a little bit of minced garlic in there with some salt and pepper, and I just kind of sauteed them on the top of the stove.
That
Nice.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they came out pretty decent. But Tanya, you took me back to old school days, like when our grandmothers used to make the greens and the cornbread. But you're not doing cornbread.
I'm not, because that's not going to help me out with what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Well, we want you to stay on point.
So I'm excited.
So, Cassendra, are you making dinner today?
Not today. Today is my busy Sunday, so I'll probably take the kids out for something later.
Okay. That's okay too, because
Yes.
you need those days too.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So today, everybody know Cassendra came back today. Everybody wanted her back. And honestly, like I said, we were just tipping the iceberg, I guess you could say. I mean, it seemed like we still needed to uncover a few more layers. So you did have a few questions that came in, and people are free to leave questions in the comments if you have a question for her. In the meantime, we are going to go into our icebreaker. And since it is Black History Month, well, we are Black. And it is also the month of love. So the icebreaker today, and we want you guys to leave a comment in the comment as well. What is something you love and admire about yourself? So it's so easy to talk about what we love about someone else. It's a little harder when we have to talk about what we love about ourselves.
That is true.
So that is the topic today. Crystal, leave it in a comment. What is something you love about yourself? So we'll start with Cassendra since she's our guest.
I'd have to say I love the fact that I'm, I guess, resilient. I'm very solution based. And so when I'm going through the worst of things, I choose not to. I don't know if it's a choice, if it's just an innate thing that I have where I don't really sit in what's wrong and the problems. My mind is always on, okay, how we get past this? What's the solution to this? So in the moment, I'm pushing through with that state of mind, and it's not until I make it to the other side I look back and I'm like, whoa, that was deep, But I find that I don't sit in my stuff too long. I'm always trying to identify the problem and trying to get to the solution of it. So it's helped me out through a lot of ups and downs in life, just not staying stuck.
Yes, that's the key word. Don't stay stuck. I like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Tan?
I would say my ability to go with the flow. I'm pretty flexible, pretty quiet, go with the flow until I'm feel extremely passionate about something. Then I'll kind of like rise up and say something, but I'm content to go with the flow for most things. Implementer,
I like that.
Yeah.
I think for myself, which is so crazy that I actually gave out the icebreaker thing and then I was sitting there thinking. But one thing I will say about myself, I do love that I am able to keep my joking spirit even when I'm going through something, because I can still find a joke out of anything. And sometimes I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or what, but I do love that even when I am at my lowest point, I can still find something to laugh at. So I'm down, but I'm not down. Like I'm still gonna laugh and I'm still gonna keep the crowd moving. And I do admire that about myself. I was really going to try to really think of something deep when I gave y'all this question, but I do love that about myself. I'm going to just leave it with that.
That's pretty good. Did you see what Aaron said? Aaron
Yes.
said that he's creative and that he was the middle school's Pop Locky. I remember. Is that
Pop Locky? Yes.
Okay.
Champ. Okay.
Yeah.
1982. Wait, what grade were you in 1982? Crystal says she is dependable and loyal.
That is true.
People trust me with their secrets. Well, maybe a few. That's a good quality, though.
It is. And that is true about Crystal. She is very dependable and loyal.
Yeah. That's a good quality.
Yeah.
Being able to trust people with your secrets that's a good quality.
And timely too. Oh my goodness. Keela, you're like timely. Crystal is like timely times 100.
Really?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah, she does like dry runs to places that she's been to 100 times.
I know.
Just to make sure nothing's changed the day before.
That was hilarious.
Yes.
Tanya is not gonna let you live that down, Chris.
I need to raise this up.
So that is the topic, the icebreaker today. And so, with that being said, ladies, where are we going today?
We're going
all the way there. Yes, ma'am.
All the way there.
Okay, I hit the DJ button, but it was way over there.
Where are we going today? All the way there. Let's go.
Hello, everybody. Crystal say I still do dry runs. Yeah, I don't blame you. But like Tanya say, the fact that it be places that she's already been. But hey, you want to make sure the traffic is good and stuff, right? So listen, everybody, we would love for you to share the podcast. I know everybody knows somebody, especially in this day and time, that is co-parenting. Sometimes it's not always fun, but what we want to do is to help people make it easier, a little better, soften the blow on the kids. And Cassendra has some questions. I mean, people kind of came out of the work with some of these questions. So if you have a specific question, we would love for you to drop it in the comment. But let's do a really, 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 really quick recap from last week. I know you touched on just what your company was about. So let's tell people about that again, once again.
Okay, so again, everyone, first of all, thank you for having me here. If you joined me last time, you had some insight on what we're about. But those that are seeing me for the first time here, my name is Cassendra Cadeau. I am the founder of a nonprofit called Blended Hearts, based out of the Orlando, Florida area, but we are a national nonprofit organization that helps supports blended families navigate all things blended. Last year's main focus was co-parenting, and that's going to be a running theme through this year because a lot of the blended situations stem from how successful or effective the co-parenting relationship is at the top of the chain. And so, but we cover many other things. A lot of it is, life after divorce or dating after, a failed relationship. But the hearts part of our company are the children involved, because no matter what is happening at the higher level amongst the adults and the parents, we all share the same heart, which is our children. And our goal is to support the families in navigating so that we can create a safe, stable environment for the children that are involved. I'm also a divorce coach. And so many blended families come from come from divorce situations, but we are also finding that a lot of them never make it to marriage. You know, there's a lot of combinations of how how blended families are created, and so I come in wearing those two hats and understanding, you know, those two platforms of how the families are formed. And so last week, you know, a topic such as this, it creates a life of its own because it touches so many. If I were to ask you how many people listening now are either divorced, going through a divorce, or know someone that is or did, I think a majority would have their hand raised because
Definitely.
it touches so many families. And so last week was an example of how even when speaking on one topic, how one question can lead into so many others. And the conversation just keeps going because we all have some sort of relatable story, whether we grew up from it or we're living it or a family member or a dear friend is going through it. We all can chime in and speak on the topic.
Yes, I like that.
Mhm.
It's just so relevant right now because so many people are affected. You know, like you say, know someone
Mhm.
from divorce, been through a divorce, or in that nature.
Already doing, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and the co-parenting thing can sometimes be it can sometimes be difficult, especially in the beginning of a divorce when you are trying to separate, create boundaries, make rules, who's
Yeah,
gonna do what, and it can become a little complicated.
it can.
So I think it's an awesome thing for you to do for people because people really do need answers. And I am totally a believer that you do not have to hate or, go through all the unnecessary drama
Mhm.
that people take themselves through in situations such as this. So, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say exactly. I know in our society that's what is highlighted in order to make reality TV what it is, and you know the major headlines are when people are at each other's throats when it comes to co-parenting, and we even named it baby mama drama and baby daddy
Right.
this, and so it's highlighted so much, but it doesn't have to be that way. And it's unfortunate that the co-parenting relationships that are working are not, in the headlines as often as it should be, because there are many of us out there that it ain't easy. It's definitely not
Mm-mm.
easy, and it does take work, but there are families out there that are getting it done effectively, for lack of a better
Yes.
word. Yeah.
Mhm. Some of us are. So your first question was or is the communication is poor. And I'm reading these questions exactly the way they wrote them.
Okay.
So I'm gonna read them exactly the way they wrote. The communication is poor because there is a hefty amount of dislike and some disrespect on both sides. Conversations are had through the kids. What steps can be taken to resolve this?
Okay. So this question was loaded because it had so many, it had different parts to it, and I'm going to break it down for you guys that probably may not have recognized it. I think what stood out to me the most, the biggest red flag, was the part of conversations are being had through the kids.
Mhm.
That kind of spoke out the most to me in that question. But if we go in the order of how the question was asked, the part about the dislike and the disrespect on both sides, those that were with us last week, I mentioned that our program through Blended Hearts, it doesn't take both parents to go through the program for it to be effective.
Mhm.
And what I meant by that is that a lot of the work that needs to be had starts with self. It starts with at least one of the parents to take inventory on where you're at emotionally and mentally with that relationship. And so, since this question was posed stating that both sides there's a dislike and a disrespect, I would ask a series of questions of what is the root cause of the dislike? What is the root cause of the disrespect? What is it
Mhm.
about that other parent that has you holding on to those feelings? And what have you done to work through them? Because
Mhm.
sometimes the healing that needs to be had is not in the hands of that other person. We have the power to heal ourselves from these things. We have the power to forgive, even if if you don't forget, but you do have the power to forgive and choose to move on. You have the power to work through those feelings, and they can involve the other parent. For example, I know that I had a client that had the opportunity to sit down with the other parent and voice what the situations are. Look, I'm really upset at you because of A, B, C, or D. And they were able to talk through that. And some of the things that came out of it was, well, I did that because you did this to me. And it shed some light on, oh, I didn't realize that action or that thing made you that upset. My intent. So it just opened up the doors for clarity and clarification. And some conversations you find out that, well, I was holding on to something that really wasn't intended the way that I took it, but the reality of it, of course, is that sometimes you don't have that opportunity. Sometimes it's just an opening of a wound where there's a lot of tit for tat and back and forth. Well, you did this, you did that. But if you haven't tried to at least identify what it is for yourself, and to sit down and talk yourself through it, or at least get some help to deal with it so that you can be rid of that energy. Because what we don't realize is how we communicate with each other. The unspoken words say so much more than what we actually say. The tone of our voice, the body language, sometimes the silence when something should be said. Two people can say the same words, but because of how you said it, it translates differently to the person that heard it. And so a lot of that dislike and disrespect energy, sometimes we need to take a step back and take ownership of what part we're playing in it. And if we learn to heal that side of ourselves, not only do we keep ourselves from projecting those negative vibes, but we are also of clear mind to know how to respond when the person comes at us with that vibe.
That's
So
true.
I personally had a situation where, something was come at me. I sat back and I said, wow, why is that person still upset? And I had to ask, like, I thought I was asking a legitimate question about this situation. Can I ask you what about my question upset you? Like, straight black and white question. Like, can we talk about it? Now it's up to that person to let me in and disclose what it was, or it's up to them to shut down and continue to be themselves. But at least I had that clarity to block it and not internalize it, and just hold up the mirror. Like, do you realize how you just spoke to me?
Right.
Was it something like part of the question is the tone of ownership? Was it something that I said that triggered you to speak to me that way? Please tell me what that was so that I know not to do that again. You know what I mean? And so what energy are you coming with in that situation? So it's self-inventory about that. And so go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry, because I thought you were finished with your thought. You're the expert. Go ahead.
No, I'm done with that thought as far as that part of the question. So I don't know if you had something relating to that.
Kind of. I just wanted to go back to when you said being able to forgive. I think, too, we have to realize that forgiveness may not be asked for. They may not mention it, but it's just something that we should have to do, or we should do. I'm saying we loosely, whomever needs to forgive, without even them coming to apologize. Because we may wait all day until we blue in the face for someone to apologize. That's something we need to learn how to do. And then you mentioned too, just how something may be received, and things are lost in translation. So you're talking about having a conversation, but if you're talking through kids,
oh no,
you don't know how that's going to come out. They could be running to their room, packing their toys. Daddy said he don't want you coming next week. Like, where'd that come from?
Not only that, but
text messages, emails.
As adults, when we hear the message directed towards us, we're triggered. We respond.
Right.
What damage are we doing to our children when we do that? Like, we're taking their childhood away from them. Like, communicating through my kids is not allowed. And if it is, it's one of those high level things like, hey, when you so my relationship with my children is such where I coach them through their relationship with their father. And the reason why that's necessary is because I'm the custodial parent, and they spend their day in and day outs with me. And so there's an awkwardness when daddy comes around and he missed so many days, you know what I mean? Like when daddy's not a part of the day in and day out. And so I'll do something like, hey, when you see your dad, don't forget to tell him about something that happened at school, like you got that honor thing or whatever, because I can tell him, but I want to raise them in a way where the big news and excitement is not just for mommy, you know, it's for daddy as well. And daddy should hear it from you, because conversations can be had, and it's a mutual thing. Like I don't believe in us parents being the only one held responsible to form a relationship with a child. We have a responsibility to raise our children, to teach them that what comes naturally with one parent can be learned and worked on with another.
That is so
parent,
true.
you
that
know?
Is so true.
And so I identified that within my kids, and I would say, hey, did you tell your dad yet? Go ahead and call him and tell him now. And so if I send a message to my kids, you know, through my kids for their dad, it's not about mommy said whatever. It's me coaching them through. And I take responsibility of not taking advantage of that. And so I'll never send them and be like, tell your daddy I said, you know, it's usually on the level of, yeah, share with your daddy. And then when they come back, mommy, I told him and he said, and I'm like, that's great. And for me, it's a learning. And maybe that's the coach in me, or maybe that's the person that I know I had that with my parents, and I wish that they would have it with their dad, kind of thing. And so these are things that I instill in my children. But back to using the kids to converse with other parents, no. We need to really stay away from that. And there are so many other methods to get messages to the parent, whether it's text messaging, whether it's emails, or do it through another adult if you have to.
Exactly.
Come on, we're grown. Like we are raising a child together or apart or whatever, but let's try to figure out how to communicate with that parent. Our children should not be involved
with each other. That is one thing that I like you never allowed to happen, because partly what Tanya said, because kids are kids. They just gonna repeat the message. They're just repeating it, you know, but it might not have even been meant the way the kid repeated. So they're like, they don't even like when you buy me these type of shoes, and you like, what? Well, they not spending their own money. You know what I'm saying? And then it's like, so you said you didn't like the way I bought the shoes. Like, no, what I said was X, Y, and Z. So that's why whenever there is an issue like that, you know, come to me. And even when they used to plan, you know, let's say overnight ventures, because we never did this your week, my week. It was always she coming over this week. She's home this week. So we never did the your week, my week thing. It was always whenever she wanted to go, kind of a thing. And then he would come over and see her. But my thing is, there was an incident one time when he was like, well, you know, I'm picking her up Friday. And I'm like, well, when did y'all decide this? He was like, well, she called me. I'm like, well, nobody talked to me, because Friday we have X, Y, and Z planned. You know, and he's like, oh, well, she didn't tell me. And I'm like, well, no. So this is what needs to happen.
That's why I don't play with that, kids, because the kids have no idea what their itinerary looks like for the weekend. You know, they have no idea what commitments are already in place. And even if they do, they're kids. They're gonna forget.
They don't, and they don't sometimes care, because they might not want to go. You know, they
I want to go to daddy's anywhere. I want to go do that thing or whatever. Like, and that's a major part. But at the end of the day, we need to leave the kids out of it.
Definitely.
We grown. We need to leave the kids out of it.
And we need to act like it.
Yes.
So now number 2, and I know off the grid, you were saying this was a little of a different question. So
it was loaded.
How can we decide what religion to raise our children in?
Now, this question, if the person just happens to be live with us right now, I would love to get some context on it. But for me, religion is something that, you know, at the time of you guys coming together as a couple or something before, you know, the baby was born and things, I'm just curious to know if this conversation ever came up before the children were born. Because I'd like to say that these are things that probably should have been discussed early on, just at the point of dating and coming together, or maybe there wasn't a dating thing. Maybe it was just oops, we had a child together.
Exactly.
And here we are. But this type of question, it does take a lot of conversation and communication. What happens a lot of the times is whoever's the custodial parent usually ends up leading the path of how the child is being raised. And that's only because when you're living day in and out with that parent, however way your parent is living, like going to church or praying or reading a certain Bible or something, that's just what is either taught or picked up by the child. But if there's a serious difference of opinion, it really goes back to the parents discussing it. I've come across families that introduce their children to both religions and leave it up to the child at their own discretion to decide which one they like, which one they prefer. But if it's a situation where the child is not of age to decide for themselves, and it's a parental argument at the top of, I don't want my child learning this, I want them to be raised that way, it can get really serious depending on how bad each person wants it.
It really can.
Yeah, but I cough it up to communication. A similar question was a client from last week. It was brought to my attention that the controversy on COVID vaccination, I should say. One parent was adamantly against it. Like, I didn't give permission. I don't believe in that. And, they were so against it. But the other parent was like, no, like, they had their own opinions. And so you're at a crossroad. When you do nothing, the child is not vaccinated. But then when you do something, it that other parent feels like you took my parental right to make medical decisions for that child. And if a divorce is involved, if there's court ordered directive on how these things should be handled, then the person that went against that court order can deal with the consequences of that, depending on how it's worded. Because there are some divorce paperwork that clearly states that you need the other parent's consent, or the other parents need to at least be conferred about, especially if that parent is the one doing the health insurance and all of that. And it was clearly stated at the time of divorce that I am to be involved in all decision makings as far as schooling, their education, their not religion so much, but just even medical stuff. Like it can become a very muggy thing. But my go-to is that, look, this child does not only belong to one parent. It took the two of us. And so move in a spirit of at least showing that other parent that you do consider their opinions, and that you want the same respect for your opinions to be heard, and talk it out and see if you guys can come to an agreement. But if you've got all that negative energy still in play and you didn't work through all of that stuff, these type of situations are not easily worked out because you haven't started from the basics of respect, communication, self-respect, self-reflection, healing. There's some basics that goes into effective co-parenting.
It really is. Okay, so number 3.
Yes.
We have an issue with both parents attending games. One parent comes with a new boyfriend that upsets the children. How can I start a conversation to let her know that he is not welcome right now?
Right now or ever?
Maybe right now. Maybe they're thinking about the kids are just not okay with the situation yet, is what I think.
I have to close my blind. I can still hear you guys.
Okay.
So this is another one that I had a lot of questions about. In what way does it upset the child? Like, I'd like to know more about the context of how it's upsetting to the child. Off of the question, it sounds to me like maybe the other parent started dating prior to the child being ready to know about it, being ready to accept that. And so as an advocate for your child, yes, you should speak to the other parent about how it's in fact impacting and affecting your child. But you would hope that the other parent that is bringing the new partner around will consider that. But my motto is that as parents, we choose to love our children more than wanting to hate our ex, you know what I mean? Like wanting to get under the skin, because some of these situations, do we really need to have that new boyfriend or girlfriend show up? Is it
exactly
have to? Is the focus of the game to flaunt this new person, or is it to be there as the parent and cheer our kid on, to show our kid that I, as the parent, is there? But again, there's a lot of questions that would help me, with every question, the answer is slightly different depending on the circumstances.
right.
But I threw out some scenarios that's worth considering, because it could be one of those tit for tat, like I'm coming around with my new boo just to show
right.
I moved on.
Exactly.
Is that really the energy we want to, we really got to focus
not at
on
the
what's
expense
important.
of your child.
Yeah. Especially if the child is truly upset, because that statement of the child being upset, is the child really upset, or are we?
Are you upset?
Are you upset? Right.
Yeah. Are we saying if I was the child, I would have been upset? Like what exactly is the context, of that? So,
or the child upset because you guys don't know how to act. Like,
yeah.
you're embarrassing me.
So, like if you don't act right when every time they bring the new person over, then I'd rather that person not come.
Exactly.
But is the problem the new person, or the problem the fact of how your parents are acting when the person, So there are so many things with that question. But if I dealt with the question as it is, I would say, let's focus on, because what's more important is the child. This child is upset. Let's dive into that and figure out what we can do to ease that for the child. And just because we're ready to date doesn't mean that the child is ready to see us date.
Right.
Because I know for me, I started dating well before my kids was ready to accept it. And it wasn't until one day the kids was like, "Mommy, when you gonna start dating? You deserve to be happy." And I was like, "Word, like, okay."
Right.
Like, I didn't introduce them to the people, but I was a little bit more transparent of when I went out. Because before, when I went out, it was like, "Oh, I'm meeting a friend for a business meeting," or something.
Right.
Now it's like, "Oh, mommy's going on a date. Wish me luck." Like they're more involved in it, So yeah, just because we're ready to date and be around this person doesn't mean our kids are. And I'm not asking that a parent should hold off on their adult stuff, but do we have to force it on the kids? Like, is it really that important for the kids to swallow it just because,
Exactly.
So, that's, I don't know. How does that, again, I'm curious to know if these questions I'm posing are helping the audience, because it never really as black and white as the question presents.
Right. And like you say, you only have limited information. So we have to kind of work with what we have.
For sure.
And I will say, one sure way to know is if that ex-wife or husband approach the other one and say, "Hey, don't bring your boyfriend or girlfriend." If they get offended, then their motives are not right. And I hold true to that, because if they say you're right, it's probably not good for our child to see, this.
And just the fact that someone's bringing it up.
If they do all of that, then their motives are
But
not
Tanya,
right.
I will say this. I would probably need somebody else to tell me that, because you telling me that is going to make it seem like you still trying to control what I'm doing, and you're not about to control what I'm doing. So don't worry about what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just taking on the attitude that would probably happen. And so, yes, I do agree that there should be some communication, and it probably should come from the other parent. But I think that it needs to be,
someone that's a little bit more objective, someone that's like impartial. Because I know with my situation, like when it came to me, it did take someone that was that person felt that they were on my side in most things, but when they heard it from that person, it was received a whole lot better. Like, wow, you think so too? Like, maybe I should think about it. Like they didn't even take the time to think it out, because who the message was coming from. And so, the person delivering the message does have an impact.
Because if we still kind of got a little bit of tension, I'm thinking you just a hater, dog. You know what I'm saying? You just a hater. You can't stand to see me living good. You know how how people are. So I do. So yes, but I totally agree with Tanya. I'm being funny because I know those are real situations.
Yes,
But
yes.
but I do agree with her. You should come to communicate effectively in a mature way, because the person could take it all wrong.
All the way
They
left.
be
Yeah.
so jealous, you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh. And this was not implied in the question, but I've seen this happen as well. I hope the person that's asking for the new boyfriend not to show up don't have their own girlfriend on the sidelines cheering on that kid, like, because
Right.
sometimes it's okay for me to do it because our situation is different, but you can't come with your person, for
Oh,
whatever reason. It'll be double standards in those
that
situations.
is very true. And we've
Yeah,
seen that happen too.
like I live with my person, so it's okay for them to come around, but your
But
person
your person still
doesn't
new.
qualify,
Yeah.
to come to the game, so we definitely have to be fair about those situations.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So the next question is, what can we do to boost their sense of security, self-esteem, and I'm assuming obviously the children,
Okay.
a self-esteem and well-being during the transition?
So during the transition, because it is a transition, it can be a very unstable time for the child, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of confusion. The same emotions that we go through of not knowing day to day what's going to happen next in this process of whether it's separation, divorce, or even just learning to live, the co-parenting thing. When they're transitioning, we want to try to keep as much as we can stable. For example, if you have a choice between, let's just say a relocation is involved where you have to separate your households. If by any means you have the possibility to still stay within the same neighborhood, and I don't mean the block, but at least in the same area where you don't have to pull your kids out of school, I think that'd be the first part to try to start with, because a sudden change in the home and then also changing schools, new friends, new teachers, new environment. That's a lot, because it's not just the loss of the home life, but it's a loss of all their friends and what, they spend a lot of time at school, and it shakes them up a lot. But that's not the be all and end all. Let's just say you did have to pull them out for school, because some things we can't avoid. Are there any extracurricular activities that you could still keep them in? Like, just because you took them out of school, can you still drive them to that same soccer, team that they're playing for? Can you still have them stay with that Girl Scout troop that they're still a part of, that
Something
baseball
still familiar.
club? Yeah. Are you guys still attending the same church? Are there any, like how much of this transition is staying the same? How much can you keep the same for the sake of the child? Because, the hardest transition is when it results in, like, we're uprooting you up to another state, like you totally gone. Like that's like ripping the child out and planting them into a new place, and that's a whole nother thing. But if you are still in the same city and state, how much of their old life can we still keep constant? And sometimes you can't even keep those things. We can work within the home. What traditions did you have in the home when you all together that you can still keep going for the sake of the child?
Right.
Like for my kids, we went on a cruise every year as a family. Best believe I kept that going every year.
Right.
We had to have the talk that daddy won't be a part of it, but we're still going to enjoy our cruises as a family. And they look forward to it every year. That was something I kept for them. Or their tradition was going to my brother's every holiday to open up Christmas, right before Christmas. We had a tradition of family games and things like that. My ex and I had a mutual agreement that holidays are a major thing with my family, and he didn't want to take that away from them. And I was grateful for that, because me wanting to keep things fair, knowing that every holiday he should not have to go without his children. If he wanted to alternate, I was fine with it. But
he was okay with it.
He released it. He said, we found ways for him to see them on the holiday, but those
Right.
core big moments, he let our kids have that. Or like, let's just say visitations fall on an actual event that the kids are used to attending every year, every month, or whatever. is that other parent that had that weekend able to step outside of their own, ego
Right.
or,
Right.
whatever, and say, you know what, let's switch weekends, or I'll give up my weekend so that the kids can attend their cousins from the other family's birthday
Right.
party. Things
Right.
like that,
Right. That's
So
important.
yeah,
It
so
is.
those are things that helps keep the self-esteem and stuff that they had already, helps keep that intact for them, as far as still giving them that opportunity to be their own person, to still have their circle, to still participate in their activities while some of the other changes are happening. So
Mhm.
the answer to that question is, while we're transitioning, let's try to keep as much of that transition the same as what it was before. Maybe there's a new way of doing it, or like maybe they can't stay in the same soccer club, but I'm still going to put you in soccer.
Mhm.
You still get to play soccer.
Right.
Maybe you can't go to the same school, but when I put you in the other school, we're going to make sure you still get on. We're going to put you in a school that has another track team, so you can still play, run track, or, run a race, or whatever. However way we can make it what it used to be for that child. Let's be conscious of that, because too many times we think kids are resilient, they'll be fine, but yeah, they will be fine. But can we help them along a little bit with that process?
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So like you, I was kind of similar too. So like we had made a pact that my daughter would never wake up, on a Christmas morning without her dad. That was one thing. So even though she spent Christmas primarily with my family, so what he would do is come over like early in the morning before she got up,
Yeah.
help put whatever toys we needed to put together. And then once she got up, he was there. So that was comforting for her. Like, she likes opening up her gifts, with him being there. And
Yeah.
then one year it snowstormed really bad. So he was able to FaceTime her and, be there to open up the gifts. But let me say this too. At those times I were not dating. And then at the one time when it did become very, very serious, we were all here. So, so it wasn't like okay, your daughter's father can't come over. He like, cool, that's the way y'all do things, but
Yeah.
I'm there too. You know what I'm saying? So,
Mhm.
everybody kind of was around, which was cool. And it all worked out, but he didn't overstay his welcome. He opened the gifts with her, and then I always make, and then he was out, so he just wanted, that was one thing he wanted to do. So I know you don't have to necessarily do it that way, but what I'm saying is you can make something where they could kind of still feel a little normal, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's
And your point too, it doesn't have to be that way. I want people to realize that my role, for example, me being here talking to you about this subject, is to not tell you what is the right versus wrong way
right.
of doing things.
Right.
It's finding the right way that works for you
Exactly.
and yours, because what might fit great for this family and this child and this circumstance is not going to work for someone else's.
Exactly.
But you have to at least open yourself up to the possibilities of what will work for you and stand for it.
Right.
For it, and don't allow anyone to come in and question what is already working for your family.
Exactly, because people will do that.
They will do that based on what I would do if I were you. This is not your story. This is not your situation.
Exactly.
A perfect example is that, and it goes back to what I said earlier about how people, they get their cue from what they see in these shows and the movies and everything, when that ain't always the best way. I remember when I was either when I was dating my husband or we were already married or something. It was that first big visit, because my oldest daughter's dad is in New York. And so he was coming into town to visit. And this was the first time he was going to visit with me having a guy in my life. And that was going to be a big visit. So a conversation was had with both men separately, But the guy that I was dating at the time, I told him, I said, hey, when he comes into town, this is normally what we do. But now that I'm in a relationship, let me know what you think about that and what makes you, because what I won't do is compromise what's best for my child, but I'm also not going to be here to sabotage a good thing that I got going,
Exactly.
Because I'm trying to move on and start over, right? And so I think because of how I approached it, his answer was pretty much, all right, well, if what you're telling me is on the up and up and everything, I don't got a problem with it, as long, as if it works. I'm not, pretty much his angle was like, I'm not here to get in the middle or getting in the way of a father getting to know her daughter.
Right.
All right, cool.
Exactly.
Fast forward to the visit happening. Do you know what that picture ended up looking like? I'm in the kitchen on the phone with my best friend, stirring the pot of whatever I'm cooking for dinner that night. Both men are on the sofa drinking beers, watching the Laker game, while my toddler is on the floor playing her toys, oblivious to what's happening, because we did not disrupt her world.
Exactly. That's my same scenario.
Her daddy came into town like he normally does. Like, I don't even think she understood the magnitude of these two men meeting,
right?
And I said, girl, you wouldn't even believe what's going on in this house right now. So it worked for me. It was uncomfortable. It was unusual. It was, I was grateful that it worked out. I just didn't know, it was just everything and beyond, right? But at the end of the day, it worked out for my kids. But when family members started hearing about it, what?
Oh, yeah. Trust me, I know.
you let your ex in the, what?
Why would you do that? I would never do that. And I'm like,
had a lot to say, and it made me question, because they were like, "Oh, you put him in a tough position," meaning the current guy and all of that. And I'm like, that's not how the conversation went. I mean, he gave me his blessings. He seemed
like he was good.
It made me question what I perceived to be such an amazing meetup. Mm-hmm. And then later on that night, I was like, babe, what? Here's what so-and-so said. Like, tell me the truth. Were you okay with that? Because I went into that conversation that night feeling like, if that's how you really felt, then that meeting is not happening again, because I don't need for my man to feel like I'm, compromising his manhood or nothing by bringing the next dude in the house. But he put me at ease, and, like, in that case, it was clear, no issues. But I learned a lot to say that what works for me ain't going to work for everybody.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I learned that every time that the ex came into town and was visiting happily with his daughter, nobody knew till after he left.
Exactly. But people will try to impose their own opinions and fears. Mm-hmm. And like they got along very well, and I loved it. And people started making little names like them, Lenny Kravitz and what's Lisa Bonet husband?
Ex-husband now.
Yeah.
Well, they back together now.
Oh, more Jason.
Yes. So they'll be like, how's Lenny and Jason doing? And I'm like, okay, whatever. But at the end of the day, they got along well. My daughter was very happy. The relationship with both of them was fine, and they had no issues with it. So like you say, it's not going to work for everybody, but you do have to find what works for you. Yeah. And that's what's important. Mm-hmm. And so we are kind of winding down, and it's 47. We have 47 minutes, and we got to end. Uh-huh. So you got this last question, and I want you to touch on this really fast.
Okay.
How can I make it where I don't rob my children of their childhood because of my divorce?
Okay. So the short answer is everything that we covered earlier are examples of what's robbing them, getting them, having them being torn between, like we're doing this tug of war with them in the middle, putting them in a position where they might feel they need to choose between one or the other parent, giving them too much information, like us communicating through them. We're maturing them at a level where they can't even keep up with it, because they're being privy to conversations that no child has a business being a part of. Honoring their feelings. If a child is upset about a situation, we need to acknowledge it and honor it. We shouldn't force the children to grow up and accept the situation.
Exactly.
Meet your child where they're at, their understanding of things. They are going to grow and mature into stuff, and if you feel it's not moving along the way you would like it to, maybe you should start taking inventory for yourself, because you probably are not too aware of the process that it takes for a child to, to accept things, or maybe you're not armed or tooled with as a parent to better help your child accept or move forward as you are. But those are some examples of how we can not rob our child of their childhood. Another thing is, when we find ourselves as a single parent and it's so much and there's multiple children and we age that child, like the oldest child becomes mommy number 2 when we're
We
not
see
around,
that often.
or the boys become the man of the house, and we put these things on the children, and it's so unfair. It is so unfair. Just because we can't figure out how to put a meal on the table, why we got to put that on the 10-year-old?
Exactly.
Why can't we figure out an alternative way to get a friend involved, to get the village, the grandparents, somebody? Let's let the kid, the kids are going to learn how to cook, how to do chores and everything, but there are some responsibilities. We're putting way too much on the children, and it's putting them in a position where they can't even go out and play because they got to be in the house playing.
Exactly. And that's not right. That's not right.
Yeah.
And kids, they should be kids. And it's a lot of information kids should just not even know. And that's why I didn't even allow my family members, and my mother is online right now. She will tell you, if anybody was getting ready to talk about something, I would shut it down. Don't talk about that in front of my child because she's a child, and that is not her business. She don't need to know that. What is happening between adults, it stays between adults. Let her go outside and play. She don't need to be worrying about whatever. That's not for her to worry about. So that's a good thing. So I know, because we do not want to abruptly end it like we did last week.
It was good last week, boy.
It was good. It was good this week too. You really touched on some really good things. People can really use this. Does Cassendra counsel families and children?
I do counsel parents. I don't counsel the children. I counsel parents, and the goal is with the child in mind. And so through our sessions, you have the tools you'll need to go back home and kind of not so much correct, but shift your parenting approach to help that child, if that makes sense. But at this stage, we don't do any work directly with the children relating to the blended family dynamics. My focus are the parents. And I like that question because it has come up in recent meetings I've had as it relates to me, having meetings with some programming that are coming down the pipeline for Blended Hearts. We do have a lot of programs out in the country for children, many of which I've mentioned, a lot of just programs, outlets for kids to get involved in. And they're all great. And I partner with many of them because they are part of the big picture when it comes to these blended family situations. Your kids need an outlet, an opportunity to just be a kid and be around peers of their age and everything. But the core part of our programming is to help the parents, because as a parent myself, I was lost. Like, I hit my lowest low in my life, and it was directly relating to me feeling like I failed as a mother. And I tried everything that I knew how, and I humbled myself to God and said, God, help me, send me somebody that can help me through this. And I was grateful that I was open enough to open myself to anything that came my way that looked like something that would help. And that looked like a therapist, that looked like an attorney, that looked like an empowered girls group, that looked like, soccer, it looked like my church family. It looked like various different pillars that were in my life. But it really started with me, because I feel like no matter how much we put in the children, it's not a lost cause. It's not wasted energy.
Right.
But how effective would that time we put in the children also came from the work that we put in the parents to begin with, because a lot of the pain and stuff stems from the environments that the parents or the caregivers are putting the children in.
So can I ask a question really quick? I'm sorry, because I'm looking at Crystal's comment, and she was 19. So at Blended Hearts, you're trying to blend the families together, taking care of like the children, but they're going to be your children whether they're 20, 30, 40.
For sure.
So at what age do you stop, saying, okay, they're grown now, they got this?
Good
you
question.
Never do.
Good question.
You never do. And here's why. Because a lot of the repeat behavior of things that are happening, a lot of the parents that I work with today, you'll find that the source of their pain stems from them having gone through this as a child in their family.
Mm-hmm.
And they're moving in a manner of what they've witnessed and what they know and what they innately just know how to do. And so you never really stop. Part of my sessions with the parents sometimes is speaking to the inner child of that parent, you
I
know.
like that.
And so you never, the answer to your question is you never are done working with the child or speaking to the child, because sometimes the child is in the form of an adult body.
Wow, because I'm thinking
Yeah.
like empty nesters. So now their kids are 18 and over, off to
Yeah.
college, and now the parents are like, we
Yeah.
didn't get our job, we're out of here.
Uh-huh.
You know, so then you have those.
You're
18
never really done parenting. I mean, I'm 44 years old and I still sit and have conversations with my dad, you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
still when I was going through my worst times, my most impactful, you know, when you hear the elders telling stories, just to hear what my parents had to say about their relationship and that of their friends, or even some of the struggles I might have with raising my kids, they would bring me back to events of my life, but from their perspective. I only know the
Right.
stories as a 16-year-old kid. I didn't know what it was like as being my dad, you know. Hold on one second. But I never, as an adult now, I still need my parents, and our children will always, especially if you have that type of relationship. And for those parents that feel like my kid ain't even wanting to hear it from me, trust and believe, if you break down, if you make your way through that wall, or if you slowly, you know, eat at it just a little bit to get to the core of that child, of that adult, you'll realize that every child, especially if they felt their parent was around, there's a part of them that wishes that they still had that
Yes.
connection
Yeah.
with their parent.
I agree.
But that's a good question. As far as Blended Hearts working with children, I do encourage you all to get on our mailing list, because we do have a program that's about to come out for the children, and it's more so a support group type of program where they will be around children of their same age group, where they're dealing with similar type of not so much similar topics, but their maturity level and understanding level is there. And the pillars that I work with the parents on, as far as communication, doing so with respect, being an advocate for yourself, because part of co-parenting is at least knowing what kind of parent you want to be, and how you want to raise your child, and being able to articulate what your desires are to the other parents respectfully. And so that method, you know, we plan on teaching the children as well, because a lot of the kids, they get lost in the shuffle. They don't feel they have a voice. And so we have something coming out. So that part of it is coming through the pipeline, but right now our core programming is for the parents. But it's for the benefit of the child, if that makes sense.
So we'll make sure that we put all of her information up. I know Signa says she wanted it.
Yes.
And Tanya, throw a challenge out there really, really quick, because we got to end it.
I guess not a one. Unless Cassandra has one. I can't think of not one challenge, but to say just communicate. I mean, do you have
a good challenge? That's a good challenge, because what we're doing is we're just trying to help build healthy families, and that's what we want to get back to the core of.
Aaron is funny.
With that being said, Cassendra, yes, this is such a great show. It makes me want to deal with my ex differently. Good. I'm going to still roll my eyes. Well, you roll your eyes, but, you know, I'm glad it makes you want to deal with her differently. So we want to thank you again, Cassendra, for coming on the show. We want everybody to share the podcast. We know you know somebody who can relate to this topic. And we want everybody to have an awesome week. And the challenge this week is communication. Communicate and make it better, and do not use your kids as your communication piece. You're going to communicate with one another. So everybody have an awesome week.
Yes, be safe.
be safe, and accept the challenge.
40 degrees this week in Michigan.
I
Oh,
know.
I'm
It's like a
happy.
heat wave. See y'all later.
Bye. Be
Bye,
safe,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.